I want to tell you a quick little story about Sacred Rock. Now this rock, if you've ever been to Lawrence, Kansas, right next to City Hall in Lawrence, Kansas, there's a park called Robinson Park. Robinson was the first governor of Kansas. And there was this large 14-foot tall rock, weighs about 28 tons, sitting in this park. Well, that rock is one of the most sacred items of the Kaw people. And this rock was appropriated by the descendants of the early settlers into Lawrence, Kansas, and I'll tell you that story in a second. But this is a portrait of some prominent members of my tribe. This gentleman right here is my great-grandfather, and good looks does run in the family, by the way. Just want to let you know that. And this was a Kaw delegation that was in Washington, D.C. in 1909, but my great-grandfather was born in Kansas on the Kaw Reservation near Council Grove, Kansas. Originally, this was our territory. This was our reservation. We had 22 million acres at one point in time around 1825, and over the years with settlers moving in and other tribes being pushed to the west, our reservation shrank. And from 1825, from 22 million acres, by the time we were forcibly removed to Oklahoma in 1873, and after the Allotment Act, we went from 22 million acres to a 10-acre cemetery in north central Oklahoma. And we lost almost everything. This was when Lewis and Clark in 1804, on July 4th, Lewis and Clark stopped by what is now Independence Creek, and they named it Independence Creek because they were there on the 4th of July. And this was a depiction of the Kanza village on Independence Creek, and the village was mostly abandoned at that, Lewis and Clark said the village was mostly abandoned at that time, but the Kaws were out hunting. It was buffalo hunt time, so most people were gone from the village. But we had villages all along the Missouri River and the Kansas River, from Atchison, what is now Atchison, all the way to Manhattan, Kansas. And we're gonna be at Kaw Point today. And I've never been there, so it's my first time going to Kaw Point, but my ancestors had villages all along that area. In fact, Lewis and Clark did mention being near a Kanza village when they camped out at what is now Kaw Point. So it's going to be an exciting time for me to go out there with you today and see the homeland of some of my people at that spot. But as you know, as the Oregon Trail, the Santa Fe Trail, California Trail, as people were moving west, it had a huge impact on my people. And we, before the arrival of Lewis and Clark in 1804, the population of my tribe was estimated to be over 10,000 people. When the Spanish first encountered the Kaw in the early 1700s, the population of my tribe was estimated to be at 20,000 people. So the population kept shrinking, and with the settlers coming west, going right through our reservation, I hate to say this, but it was a super highway for diseases that my tribe were not immune to. So we lost about 99% of my tribe from diseases brought by settlers: cholera, diphtheria, tuberculosis, smallpox. So we went from 1804, we had a population of over 10,000 people. By 1888, we had just 194 people left. So these trails were absolutely devastating in that regard, but also with settlers coming in on these trails, squatters would stay on our reservation, and it became a real problem, and there were a lot of skirmishes between the squatters and our tribe, and then other tribes were forced out of their territory, and there was a lot of pressure on all the tribes kind of being pushed in together, especially around the Council Grove area, with the Santa Fe Trail going right through the our reservation in Council Grove. And I like to show this famous image. Of course, I think a lot of people, we talk about, especially descendants of pioneers, talk about this open wilderness ripe for settlement. Well, there were civilizations here for thousands of years before the arrival of settlers, and there's this mythology that this was just a wide open area for settlement, and manifest destiny spurred on by the doctrine of discovery. But my people have lived in this area since probably the late 1500s, and other tribes have lived in this area as well. So this is a reenactment of the 1825 treaty. This is in 1925. That's my great-grandfather, the son of the man I just showed you, reenacting the signing of the 1825 treaty, which impacted the Osage Nation and my tribe. And then eventually it shrank our reservation. We were moved out of this area, pushed a little further down up the Kansas River, and then eventually moved to a much smaller reservation near Council Grove, Kansas. And we were there from the 1840s until 1873, when we were forcibly marched into what was Indian Territory, which is now Oklahoma. You can see this is Indian Territory. My tribe ended up here, right up there. And then, of course, when we got to Oklahoma, we didn't have a reservation. The Osages didn't have a reservation either. The Osages had to buy their reservation from the Cherokee, and then the Kaw had to buy their reservation from the Osage. And when we left Kansas, we had about a 40,000 acre reservation at that time. The federal government was so generous, they gave us 9 cents an acre. And so when we got to Oklahoma, we virtually had no resources or a reservation. And so eventually they worked out an arrangement to buy the reservation from the Osage tribe. But along the Kansas River, right almost at the point where the Santa Fe Trail split off from the Oregon Trail and California Trail, just outside of Topeka, there's a creek called Shunganunga Creek, or Shunganunga Creek, which flows into the Kansas River. And at that spot, there was this rock, this giant red quartzite rock in the river. And that was one of our gathering places for the Kaw Nation. And this is a prayer chart from 1825. And you see right up here at the top, you see this. That's our sacred rock that's on our prayer chart. And many of the early settlers that came in knew that this was important to the Kaw people. It was called the Kaw Prayer Rock. And so we didn't pray to the rock. It was like a church for us. It was like an altar. And so we would gather there and pray to the Creator. But the rock was a kind of a symbol of the Creator. It was strong. It was resilient. Here's another shot of that prayer chart. And the rock probably came down on a glacier several 100,000 years ago, and it was deposited on the Kansas River there at Shunganunga Creek. It was made out of red quartzite, and so it would have stood out on the prairie there, the green of the prairie, and it obviously wasn't from that area. And so I think that's why it was so special to my tribe and to the other tribes. But after we were removed from that area, the descendants of the original abolitionist settlers that came into that area appropriated the stone. There was a competition between Topeka and Lawrence to take the stone. The idea was one group wanted to put the stone at the Capitol in Lawrence, or in Topeka, and another group wanted to take the stone and bring it to Lawrence as a monument to the original founders of Lawrence. And so Lawrence won that competition. In the middle of the night, they were able to load this stone. They pulled it out by a mule team. The railroad had just come through. They put it on a rail car, brought it to Lawrence, Kansas, created a little park named after the former governor, or the first governor of Kansas, and put a giant 300-pound bronze plaque on it, dedicating it to the hardship of the abolitionist pioneers who came to Kansas for their freedom. By removing my people, so my people lost their freedom so that these abolitionist settlers could have their freedom. And so this was not only a desecration of one of our most sacred items, but a way to erase the memory of the Kaw people in that area. And I first encountered this stone, I was a young man in my 20s, I'm 60 now, but I was a young man in my 20s. And my great uncle, who was vice chairman of the Kaw Nation at the time, we took a trip through Kansas to search for all of these important cultural sites to my tribe that were starting to disappear. And we visited Lawrence, Kansas, and I saw the stone for the first time. And I told my uncle, I said, someday the tribe is going to get that stone back. We're going to get it back to our people. And I've been on a 30-year journey to have this stone returned. This is the site of the stone at the confluence. That's Shunganunga Creek right here, and the Kansas River. And the stone was located originally right there before it was taken into Lawrence, Kansas. And a few years ago, we took a trip. There's the Kansas River Keepers, or the Kaw River. It's also known as the Kaw River. They took us on a trip to where the stone was originally located, and we were able to visit that site. And of course, it's on private land now. A few years ago, or I shouldn't say a few years ago, about 20 years ago, the Kaw Nation bought some of its old reservation back near Council Grove, and we created a park. There's an old railroad system, so this is trails to rails. Well, this is trails to rails to trails, because we turned the Flint Hills, the Flint Hills Tourism Board took out an old railway and created a trail now that goes right through our old reservation land, and we bought that land back and created a tribal park. And I won't go into detail, I don't have much time to go into detail, but the park is open now. You can go visit the park. We have several monuments there. And we were able to, this is Charles Curtis, Vice President of the United States in 1928, and he was Kaw Indian. I don't know if you knew that. The Vice President of the United States was a member of the Kaw tribe. So, but I'm gonna skip this because I don't have much time, but we were able to petition the city government in Lawrence, and it's a long story, but after 30 years, the city agreed to return the stone to the Kaw people. And a few years ago, we had a ceremony. Yes, thank you. And we had to decide what we were going to do with the stone. Were we going to leave it in the park? Were we going to bring it to Oklahoma? But we didn't move to Oklahoma by choice, so we decided to move the stone from the park to our tribal lands in Council Grove at that park. And it was interesting, the day we moved the stone, we didn't know how that giant bronze plaque was attached to the stone, but as soon as we tried to remove it, it popped right off. So it was like that plaque wanted to get off the stone. And we actually gave it to the Watkins Museum in Lawrence, Kansas. We knew how important the plaque was to the descendants of the people who settled Lawrence, even though some of our tribal members wanted to melt that down and make souvenirs or something out of it, I don't know. But anyway, there's the plaque. And we had a ceremony in Lawrence, and that's us signing the agreement to send that plaque over to the museum. And then we had the governor of Kansas came, and we had other notable people there for the ceremony for the return of the stone. And today, this is us moving the stone from Robinson Park. We weren't sure, we were a little nervous about moving something so sacred to our people, but we moved it safely, and it made its journey to Council Grove, Kansas, and there we prepared a site for it, and that's where it is today. So that was a long story. I made it really short, but I do want to say, though, that the Mellon Foundation heard about this project, and they asked me to write a grant to help move the stone to the new site. And so they said, put down how much you think it's going to cost, and I wrote a grant for $250,000. And the Mellon Foundation came back and gave us $5 million. And So part of that money was to document the process of the return of that stone, and there's a documentary now called The Return of the Sacred Red Rock. Just last week at the Western Heritage Awards in Oklahoma City at the National Cowboy Museum, it won Best Documentary of the Year. And I'm hopefully at some point in time I'll get to show the documentary to you guys at another gathering and go into a little more detail about this story, but it's an incredible story. But I just wanted you to know that the Kaws were intimately involved with the trail. Kaws, we acted as scouts for many of the people on the trail to get them through because there were other hostile Native nations that weren't friendly to people coming on the trail. So we had a long relationship, but also the negative impacts of the trail it had on our people. But thank you very much, and I know there's no time for Q&A, but thank you.